Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I have the wonderful Artie Halai with me. And before I introduce her, we're going to talk about all things communication today. So you want to tune in because Artie has a considerable number of years. I won't say how many years because she might hit me next time I see her in communication, from television broadcasting, running businesses. And we're going to really dig into all of the stuff around how essential being able to communicate is and communicate confidently is in 2025. So, Artie, thank you for coming on to the podcast.
It's an honor, as if I could ever refuse you, Dean.
Artie, we've known each other a long time now, and we met basically at the beginning of your LinkedIn journey. You came on the accelerator, going great guns now, what you're doing. Do you want to just tell a little bit of your LinkedIn journey?
Sure. So I had tried, like I'm sure a lot of people out there, dabbling in LinkedIn and trying different things and working with other people as well. I'd spent a little bit of money before I even came across Dean. And then I remember one day my husband saying, "Look, listen to this man." And it was one of your sessions, Dean, and I listened to it, and everything you said really made sense. And so I got in touch and we had a conversation, and then I joined the accelerator program, and I haven't looked back. And the truth of it is that when you start working with somebody who's got the credentials, got the experience, but can really break down what you need to do to get the right results, then it makes all the difference. And of course, Dean, not only were you so generous when we worked together, but you come with a really brilliant team at Maverick. So, and Maverick are not paying me a penny to say all this. I just want to put it out there, but I'm saying it as it is. And you'll know that I only speak the truth. I always speak the truth, but you do get access to experts in their own areas. So for me, that was incredible. Did I get the results straight away? No, you do have to work at things. But what's transpired for me from this LinkedIn journey has been so multi-pronged. So it hasn't just been, I wanted to attract certain people to my executive coaching sessions. It has opened doors in so many other ways as well.
And we were just talking before you started, you're traveling, speaking, and doing a lot of workshops and public speaking around this whole topic of how critical communications become, like in 2025. It's even more important than it was like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's so high up the strategic agenda now for anybody, because the truth is, Dean, we're all communicators. We're born communicating. Even babies communicate. Teenagers, okay, albeit with a grunt, monosyllabic answer. But fundamentally, we're all born communicators. But to be a confident communicator or a good communicator is a skill. And we are not taught those skills. So a lot of times we get by, but in today's day and age, to your point, it's incredibly important, especially because there is information overload. Time is being compressed. Results, people want results yesterday. So, there's so much going on that if you don't get your message out there in the right way and it's not understood as it should be, then it's just a waste of time, effort, energy.
Yeah. And obviously, your journey in communication has gone, kind of through many, many iterations, not just the kind of, you've built businesses, but you started out in the TV media, so news. And obviously the media has changed as well now. Everybody needs to be, if you're going to be a leader anywhere, you also need to be a media personality.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I started my career in 1992 when actually in the UK there were only 4 television channels. And today we've got more than like 460. So I started as a reporter out on the road. And that's really where the heart of the action is. But in those days, of course, you had no sat nav. You couldn't just send the story back digitally. You had to physically get in the car and drive back to the newsroom from the location. So you had to work to time, as journalists do even today. But you had to be really good and clear with what is the story. And that's where I really cut my teeth in storytelling before becoming a producer and eventually the presenter, where as a presenter, it's much more around the meaning that you're conveying when you read the script and how are you connecting with that audience. And that's really where I cut my teeth in communications before obviously going on and doing a lot of live presenting as well. But coming back to the point you make about the media in today's day and age, well, it's not just about once upon a time, it was okay, this company wants to raise its profile in the media. Now, what's happened is we have become much more nosy about people. And it's not enough just for a company to raise its profile. You want to know about the people behind those businesses as well.
Yeah. And that really presents a challenge for people because, like, more and more, there's the classic, you have to do a pitch, there's presentations, there's speeches, there's, all of those kind of classic things. But now there's this piece where a lot of people in leadership within organizations are saying, we need you to go out front and center. I'm seeing this more and more on LinkedIn. Ernst & Young, as an example, EY, there's a huge drive in their organization to say, get out on LinkedIn. If you're a subject matter expert, if you're a leader within our business, you need to represent us on the platform. And that creates a whole host of kind of challenges of, well, I've never done this thing before. I've never stood in front of a camera like this before. I've never had to do all of this stuff. And sometimes you can have like really capable people who suddenly go, I'm failing in this area.
Yeah, it's because it's like I said, it's a skill, it's a muscle you have to build up. And for a lot of these leaders, their whole life they've been behind the scenes, just getting on with the work, building those business, looking at the profitability and growth. And so, that's where their whole focus has been. And they have had some training and they are well versed because of course they've got to motivate and inspire and lead their teams. But that's been much more internally, whereas now there's a shift to get that out externally as well.
Mm-hmm.
The one time that I do think that the leaders have had to step up is particularly in crisis situations.
Yeah.
Because in crisis situations, the buck does stop with that person at the very top of the pyramid. And increasingly, they're the ones that have had to come forward. It's not enough to have that spokesperson that once upon a time was trained and well versed and pulled out or pushed out in those situations and in those times. So I think, there is this slight expectation that actually you're the leader in this business and you must have some things to share and say. Having said that, there is a fine line because they are in this position to pick and choose. But what I find is in the FTSE 100, very few chief execs, MDs will step up and will engage because they don't need to build their profile. That's done. The only time they might come out onto the arena is perhaps when they're looking to retire or they are looking for doing something very different. So it is interesting.
And this whole journey of like displaying confidence, that can apply. Like you can have very capable and confident. I can remember a scenario where we were doing some videos for a client and they were social media videos, and very, very senior business development, director level senior business development people were being filmed. And these guys have to negotiate hard. They're, dealing with rejection, tough situations, very, very senior businesses, FTSE listed business. And then suddenly they go onto the camera bit. And there's something about that camera lens, isn't there? Like there's something about it. So Artie, one of the guys was actually trembling, literally shaking. You could see him as he was trying to do his video, just literally shaking. And when the first time I did video properly, mine was live. I had 3 gins before I did it.
Okay, not recommended.
Artie says the best way to do this is to have 3 drinks before you do. No, but one of the things I found quite difficult, and I don't know why this is, if you put me in front of a live video, because I've done so many of them, it's so easy for me. The first time it was 3 gins, but you put me pre-recording, having to do like script, like presenting to a camera, and I can stop and record and start again. And I struggle with that. But that camera lens is brutal.
Yes, it is. And actually the quality of the camera lens makes it even more nasty now because, it magnifies every tiny little defect, if you like. So look, the camera is, they say it loves you or it hates you. But the truth of the matter is that we all started using it, particularly during the pandemic. So when COVID happened, I often say that we all became presenters. Now, some of us did it well and some of us did it poorly. But the truth of the matter is, this is a medium that's not going anywhere either now. So, we get a lot of people that use hybrid meetings, do hybrid meetings. And I think, it's the thing with the camera is we're going to have to get used to the fact that it is here. And so if you know that something is here and you're going to have to use it, then it's like anything. There's no point in running away from it, and there's no point in being constantly negative about it. You have to reframe the way you're thinking about using the camera. And the way to reframe how you're using it is to think, what is it I want from this meeting? What is it that I want to get across? And who is it that I'm speaking to? Who is that individual behind the camera or that I'm looking to get my message across to? And the number one thing that I will say to everybody is you cannot get better than practice here. So, I to this day have my phone, I use my laptop, I record, even if it's just a couple of sentences to get comfortable, to see where's my eye line, how am I coming across? And I promise you, 9 times out of 10, when I do this exercise, I'm looking back at it and I'm sitting there thinking, I'd rather sit at home and watch paint dry. There's no energy in this, it's boring, and you've got to sharpen it. And honestly, this is where you'll sharpen your skill set. Because when you look back and you see that, then actually you're forced to revisit and do it again. And eventually, like 2 or 3 takes, and you'll nail it.
Do you know what, though? I often think about any form of communication. You're right. The more you do it, the better you get. And you can't not do it and get better. Like if you don't do it, you will never get better. And you will cringe. I look at my YouTube, right? I've been doing YouTube for like 10 years or whatever. And when I look at my oldest videos, I go, oh my God.
Well, Dean, I worked in news and current affairs. I worked in a newsroom as a presenter for 15 years. And, I can tell you now, it was so painful and it's still painful to look back. But what I
Did you
say.
have all the iterations of the 90s hairdos and everything in the two?
Yeah, I really, honestly, I had the massive perm. I remember someone at the BBC once saying to me, Artie, we heard you and we saw the hair first before we saw anything else.
Like a Margaret Thatcher.
It was big hair, a proper his hair, believe it or not. but what I'll say is, look, I've yet to meet a single person who loves the way they look and sound. There's nothing special about you. You are normal, right? We all go through that. We don't like the way a lot of times that we look or that we sound, but you have to get over that quite quickly because the fundamental thing that you're doing here is you're imparting a message. That's the reason you're doing the podcast. That's the reason you're making the video. That's the reason you've agreed to be interviewed by someone, because there's a message that you need to impart to that audience. So then it doesn't become about you, it becomes about them.
Yeah. And I remember when you first came on the podcast, we talked about this, and maybe we can touch on it. Is even now, I must speak at events, just in person events. We'll just deal with in person events, maybe 7 or 8 times a month. So my schedule's insane. But those 15 minutes before
Yeah.
I speak, I feel very uncomfortable. I worry about that kind of opening it up. I'm imagining things about what if the crowd are really serious and all of that stuff, even now. And I've been doing this for 8 years. And I think a lot of people feel like it should feel easier.
It's a really interesting one, this, because it's not the same as just getting in a car and driving, right? And the more you do that, the more confident you become. And it's effortless, isn't it? You just get in the car and you drive. With this, it's very different because you've got a live audience, you've got other people. And often it's this, what's going on in our head is, am I going to be judged? It's, how are people going to be looking at me? It's, have I got enough content? It's all these other.
Pressure to deliver, pressure to
Correct.
deliver.
Correct. All these other things. So, does it become easier? I think it becomes easier in the sense that you become much more aware about your timings and, how to flip if something's not working well by reading an audience. And you've built kind of sort of some quite good get out of jail cards by this point, right? Like I call it. But no, in terms of, those first 15 minutes before you get going, no, it doesn't become easier for me either. What you do have, or what I like to call these, are controlled nerves. And controlled nerves give the edge to our performance. So, the controlled nerves keep us on our feet, but then they make that presentation a little bit more exciting and energetic. Whereas, when you feel like, oh, I've done it so many times, I'm okay, then it comes across that slight arrogance or that slight kind of sort of,
Yeah.
oh, you know what? How much do you really care about the audience and what you're going to deliver comes across? So,
And another thing that I'd love to pick your brains on here about this is energy. Like, how do you know what is the right level of energy to put into your kind of talk? It can be like when you're stood there, like there's this kind of codependent relationship. Even when you're in front of a screen or a camera, there is this kind of relationship whereby it's harder with video. I need feedback from an audience. Like, I'll give you an example. I was in Dallas and I was speaking at an event and the crowd were rowdy, like in a good way.
yeah.
The only way to say it is they were up for it.
Right. Okay.
And I fed off that, and it was bouncing, it was lively, we had some fun. But then I've been in other crowds, other environments where they've been a little bit more cautious, and so that keeps me cautious. But I think there's also a space where finding the right energy where you can infect the crowd. And I struggle with that sometimes, of going, how do I push beyond the crowd's energy and get them more energized? I don't know whether I do it or I don't, but I'm constantly thinking about, is this too much energy? Is this not enough energy? And maybe talk a little bit about that, because it's a big thing people worry about, I think.
Yeah, it is a really big thing. I've seen you, Dean, several times now, and I think you read a room really well. You're naturally energetic. But I think, to your point, different audiences are different. And our job as the presenter is to set the tone from the start about how we're going to engage with the audience. So when you know the audience and the occasion is up for it, then naturally you're going to feed off that high level energy. And that just happens when the audience is slightly more subdued, which could be, I find that in professional services quite a bit. If I go to, I don't know, financial services or legal services and I've got to do a talk, they're not going to be up and rah rah. That's
Mhm.
just not the way that cookie cutter is set or cut, right? And that's the truth, right? But at the same time, it doesn't mean that, my energy isn't going to be high. I can still do high energy, but my expectation is going to be different for how I want to engage with that audience. So naturally, because they're slightly more subdued, then my energy isn't going to be off the charts. It's going to be a little bit lower, but the engagement is still the engagement. I will still get them to do things. I will still ask them questions, but it will just be different. It's a different type of energy. That's all. And you have to be able to understand that, because that's what makes a fantastic communicator. That's what makes a brilliant communicator. Otherwise, you're going to start to feel very uncomfortable when you're continuing to do rah rah, super high energy, and the audience is not responding in that same way.
Yeah, it looks like you're having the best time and everybody else isn't.
Yeah, but worse than that, it looks like the audience is sitting there and they're going to be thinking, well, you're not connecting with us. You don't get us. And so what happens in that situation is then you become less credible, or they switch off, or there's not enough engagement and buying.
And let's just for a minute just think about that piece, because some people watching this will be business owners and they'll be like, I have to put my face on camera, I have to do more videos for my social media. Or there might be people going, actually, I'm doing presentations, maybe I'm doing webinars, or maybe I'm doing, talks, or maybe it's just a leader. How do you inject that confidence in what you're saying so you don't feel like, I think we can do it?
Yeah. Okay. So much is around certainty, clarity, and certainty. So maybe the best way to really describe this or get this point across is I worked recently with a neurosurgeon who is a spine specialist, and he did videos online. And he said to me, Artie, my not really getting the level of engagement or retention from my videos. So we worked together, and I he's the expert, and he's brilliant in terms of what he wants to say, his content. But where it's falling flat for him is the energy. And in this medium, the energy comes from the vocal. Right? The vocal is so powerful. So, of course, you've got, the right light and the right seating position. And then the second thing is structure. So, he was doing 10, 15-minute videos. I said to him, why don't you consider doing 4-minute videos, but doing 3 of them? And just look at one point or one thing that you want to get across. And then let's just put in some visuals like the X-rays so that you can talk about those. So interestingly, in this situation, we didn't change his content so much. What we did do was change the way he structured that content to make it shorter, sharper, and more engaging. And then we looked at his vocals.
Now I'm going to try and do this, right? There is this, and I think I suffer from this quite a bit. So maybe we'll do an exercise if you're up for this, Artie. Talking from the front of your mouth versus the back of your mouth. I get it, but I can't get it. Do you know what I mean?
Look, I mean, the thing around vocals is, number one, after school, we forget to read out loud. So we're always reading in our minds. Everything we do, 9 times out of 10, is in our minds. And then, we decide, okay, I'm gonna do the presentation, or I'm gonna do the talk, or I'm gonna engage. And that's our biggest mistake, first and foremost. We feel like, oh, I'm going to prepare, and we prepare in our minds, but we don't practice out loud. And then our sound also comes from 3 areas. It comes from our abdomen, our stomach, it comes from our chest, and it comes from high up here. And often when I or a lot of people are nervous, we speak high and we speak fast, and it comes from here. And the calmer we get, the more lower down our voice starts to emerge from. So, there are lots and lots and lots of vocal exercises. None of it is complex. I probably say I'm the creature of simplicity, but really, just taking a children's book and reading that out loud and recording yourself and then underlining words for emphasis, massive putting forward slashes where you have to pause and rereading it again and again and recording it and listening back will teach you and show you and create massive shifts in your vocal.
And I'm going to try and do it now, Artie. I am going to talk from the front of my mouth. But I was told, and as an exercise, because often we don't open our mouths either. So I was told to grab hold of a pen, hold it in your mouth, and talk on. And apparently, after you do that, your
Right.
mouth opens more.
Okay, so this is a new one. I haven't heard this one.
Maybe it was somebody at my event saying, could you please just put a pen in your mouth and shut me up?
I doubt that very much. But I did a course recently from Harvard X on managing happiness. And there is something called the Duchenne smile.
The
And
Duchenne smile.
the Duchenne smile, okay?
It sounds bad.
It's not bad. It's not bad. But what they're saying is if you get a pencil and put it in your mouth like this and hold it there for about 45 seconds, the ends of your mouth turn up naturally and it changes the way you feel. And this is all around smiling. But coming back to your point about putting the pencil in and talking, it's I can see why people would suggest different things. I always suggest to people really sit there and do your vowels and really exaggerate them. A, E, I, O, U. And really, do those exercises because we forget how to shape the letters properly. And tongue twisters, actually, Dean. Here, let's do a tongue twister.
Oh,
This is really good, right? For articulation, right? This is
seashells,
exactly what I'm
seashells,
talking about. Go on, have you got one?
seashells.
Sally
No,
sells seashells on the seashore. Let's go with that.
Sally sells seashells on the seashore.
Right, you got to do it again.
Sally sells seashells on the seashore.
Good. Do it one more time.
Sally sells seashells on the seashore.
Good. Okay,
No
do this
mistake.
one. Do this one. Do this one. I
Practice.
know you love unique New York.
I know you love unique New York.
Say it again.
I know you love you. I know you love unique New York.
Say it one more time.
I know you love New. I know you love unique New York.
Well done. It's harder because it's not written down. But the reason I tell people to do tongue twisters and a minimum of at least 3 times is because when you don't know the tongue twister, you are forced to really focus on each individual word because
Mhm.
you're so adamant you don't want to get it wrong that you naturally slow down and you have to focus on each individual word to get it right. And because you're focusing on each individual word, you start shaping the letters properly.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a really good exercise to get articulation in the vocal, to get clarity in the vocal.
So when we are talking, when we are speaking, the other one that I think a lot of people kind of struggle with is time. And I've seen this, like you can have it where you lose the track of time and it goes really fast. You can also have it like I did one I was in America and I was speaking for 2.5 hours. That was my slot, 2.5 hours, one slot. Time went so fast, but what I'd forgotten to do is switch my watch over. So I didn't know, I couldn't work out in my head and keep talking what the time difference was.
Oh no.
So thank you very much. And then somebody went, you got another hour left.
No. Oh
But it
my God.
felt like a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've had that time where it feels like a long time and it's not been very long. And I've had it the other way around where a short amount of time goes very fast. So how do you track that time? But also, and I'd love you to mention about this, the awkwardness of silence.
Okay. All right. Let's do the first one first and then we'll talk about the silence and the power of silence. So the thing with time is, I mean, I when I worked in television, of course, we worked to the second. So I got really good with understanding, okay, I can get this much in this amount of time. of course, when I came out, preparation is so fundamental, and how you structure the content is very, very important. So I always say to people, be clear. Are you taking questions at the start or as you go along? Because that will help you with the timing. Be careful about, how are you structuring your presentation? So if someone turns around and all of a sudden says, as has happened to me, oh, you know what? You had an hour and a half, but we're overrunning, so we can only give you 45 minutes now. Right? So easily, when you structure the content in a way, you can pull out two chunks and it will still work, and you're not panicked in that moment either. So a lot comes down to that preparation piece, and I talk so much about that because it's so important and it's so tied into your confidence as well. So that's the first thing. And then, like you, Dean, sometimes you get told. I did a panel discussion recently, and in the prep I'd spoken to the panelists, and this was all around AI and technology. So I'm not an expert in those areas, but I have an expert panel, and this is where the prep comes in. So I had a conversation with them all, and beforehand I said, okay, here are the general theme, here's the sort of questions that we'll be looking at. I want everyone to have a go at answering this. And then on the day, of course, we sit down, and we've got 45 minutes, and I've covered off all the questions in like 10 minutes. And I'm like, wow, okay.
Now you have to invent questions.
So, and we kept the pace up quite nicely. And then it was like, okay, think on your feet now. And again, it was lovely because I went back and I just said, okay, let's just look at some examples here. Let's bring this to life for the audience. And that's how I kind of sort of, fulfilled that time. So I think when you're having fun, they say it goes really fast. And at other times it can just really start to drag. But in both scenarios, I would say you have to know your content. The reason you can make it work, Dean, is because you've done it so much and you know your content so well.
Well, interestingly, in that one where I came up an hour short,
Go on, go on, because I'm reading.
it was a completely new slide deck.
Right.
And
But,
the group were more quiet.
right,
So
okay.
normally we have we'll do Q&A as we go, and they were quite quiet. So we were kind of like, you end up I mean, we had enough material, but I just, for some reason, my clock was obviously, I think it was because it was US, I thought we were 6 hours behind, but we were 5, or whichever way around it was. So I was
Yeah,
like, oh, we're coming up for it. But I was actually
yeah.
an
I
hour
tell you
short.
what else I do. I often will say to an organizer where I'm going, I need somebody to give me an indication of when I've got 10 minutes left. So I'm pretty good at that. And the organizers are always up for that. So that's another nice tactic to just say, actually, that's how much time you've got left, or give me 10
I should have
seconds,
done
give me
that.
10 minutes, give me 5 minutes. And then, yeah, I'm done. So, but I'll never forget this one. This was a really big event. And I was in a virtual studio, a television studio. And it was so slick, and I had an earpiece, and then I was like, okay, you need to give me a count for when we need to stop, but it's a hard stop. And they were like, yes, we'll give you a count and everything. So it went well. I had a couple of guests that I was interviewing. I was taking Q&A from the virtual audience. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to bring it to a close now. And I'm waiting for this count in my ear. And of course, I'm not hearing anything. And I'm like looking at this clock in front of me that's counting down. But I'm thinking, no, they said they'd give me a count in my ear. And eventually I just finished what I was saying, ended really well. They kind of put the rolling credits and the titles and the credits on the end credits. And then they come to the front to pick up the mic and stuff. And I was like, where was my count? How did I do for time? I've no idea. And they were like, yeah, you were spot on. And I was like, I didn't receive a count in my ear. You told me you'd give me a count.
So, when you're doing the news, obviously, and we'll go to the silences in a minute, but
Yeah.
when you're doing the news and you've got, it is a military, I've been on BBC a couple of times and Sky, and it is like a, militarily planned thing, but sometimes stuff goes to kind of awry. Let's say you come up short on a report or a report doesn't kick in. live link fails and now you're 30 seconds out.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so yeah, I learned the hard way. So, I will never forget, the first couple of times you're there in the studio and you're going, okay, we'll go live now to our reporter at the scene, John McAdams. You can see John's not there. And in your earpiece, because you've always got to wait for instruction, right? Because this is a team, right? So there's no point in you moving on to the next story if the pictures for the next story aren't there and everything's linear in the system. So all of a sudden, John's not there, and all of a sudden, it's like all you can hear in your earpiece, I kid you not, is "Where's John? Where's John?" And you're thinking, "Well, I can't really say where's John out loud."
How do you manage that though?
Yeah.
Because when you've got somebody talking, I'm the kind of person where if I hear that, I'd say it.
It comes with practice. In all fairness, it's like anything, right? A surgeon can stand on his feet in intense pressure for 5 hours straight, 7 hours straight on an operation. Similarly, newsreaders, we are trained in that way to hear from the earpiece. And we also have a button where we can cut out everybody else's voice except the directors, which is
Okay.
what I used to do. I didn't need to hear what the producer or anybody, 10 million other people was saying. I just wanted to hear what the director was saying. And initially, your get out of jail card, what I learned was always to apologize because obviously something's gone wrong. So that buys you a sentence or two. So you'll just start and you'll say, well, we're obviously having technical difficulties there. We will try and bring you that report a little bit later on. And then you look down and then you look up and, hopefully the auto cue has corrected itself and there's another story there. If there isn't, then my second get out of jail card kicks in. And that would be something along the lines of, if you've got a story, then please do get in contact with us, email us. And so, you've bought yourself a bit of time and the team is then on track. You'll notice at the end of every bulletin, there is always a buffer. So, sometimes the news presenter will say, thank you very much. Okay, that's all we've got time for. We'll see you again here. Same tomorrow. Thank you. Goodbye. And it's that tight and they're that slick. And at other times, it will be much longer. So they might recap on something, or they'll fill that time by saying whatever.
So is that like a pre-planned filler for emergencies, or is it down to you as a presenter to kind of
It's
figure that out?
Yeah, it's down to you as a presenter. But I think all presenters will have something like that through experience that, is the fallback.
Yeah, that's crazy. Just having, particularly if you don't know, like, if you don't know what the end story is going to be. I've seen loads of bloopers on YouTube of, where you get that kind of right, and they're just about to shuffle the papers and everything, and they're chatting about the last story, and one guy or one person says something, not thinking about what he said, and it's kind of like
Yeah.
inappropriate.
I know. My God, yeah. I mean, it can, or you think that, the program's come off air and it hasn't.
Yeah.
Or you think it's about to go on air, or and it's already on air. So there's loads of those things, but polished presenters will really be able to manage those silences. They will be able to manage when things go wrong, and they will be incredibly aware not to say anything that you don't want out there in the run up to a live bulletin or off the back of it.
Do you know one of the things we've had to do in the office? Obviously, we have a lot of office banter between us, right? We're a close team, and in my office, in my open plan, we have an open plan office where me, COO, Dave's in there who does all our training as well, and Daniela. So we'll be chatting away, and I'll be sat on a call waiting for somebody to join, and we'll be chatting away, and I forget I've got my AI kind of fireflies capturing all of this. And there was one where the client's AI note taker had joined the call, and I'm talking about, like, I'm going away on holiday, and I'm like, I need to get some more clothes, I need to get some more underwear, and all of this is in the client's note.
Captured. Is being captured. It's really, honestly, it's really dangerous. It's easy to forget. Do you know the number of times at live events when I had a mic, and it's not a handheld mic, it's a lapel mic, or a headpiece, and you just forget. You forget it's on. The number of times I've done that. I've gone to the ladies, I've said things. Once I remember eating something and, the sound just vibrated and went out like you can imagine having a few crisps or something. And it's just the most excruciating thing ever. It happens, right? But you just do need to be mindful. I mean, yeah, it's so easily done.
So we haven't talked about pauses. So let's just talk about pauses for a minute because they're powerful, but they're also very unsettling for the presenter or speaker.
Yeah, they are. They're uncomfortable because let's face it, as a presenter or speaker, when you're speaking, even second feels like a lifetime sometimes. Right. So initially, when we start, we're all nervous because don't forget I spoke about those controlled nerves and I'm the first to admit I'm slightly faster when I first start before I settle down a bit. And the thing with a pause is the question I get asked most often is how long should a good pause be? Because we lose all sense of timing when
Yeah, like a second feels like a minute.
feels like a lifetime, right? And I always say, okay, this is the exercise, right? One elephant, two elephants, three elephants. Don't say it out loud. It's something to say in your mind. But 2 to 3 seconds is a good pause. And, a natural time to pause is when you come to the end of a subject or an area or a point that you want to make. What we forget to do is we don't give the audience a chance for that point to land. See what I did there?
It's almost like you know what you're doing.
It's amazing, isn't it? Who would have thought?
But you're right. Sometimes we race through material and we don't give any time for it to sink in.
And
Something I
that's
did
the
there.
thing. Yeah, exactly my point. But we might ask a question.
Mhm.
We ask a question, we'll say, how long do you think a good pause should be? 1 second? 2 seconds? Right? I've come straight in now. Whereas if I'd said, how long do you think a good pause should be? Well, most people would say, I've given time for that to land. Not because I wanted you to answer it. I've picked up.
Yeah.
But
It
there's
forces
enough.
you to forces the audience to think. And it also, I think that's where it's weird, isn't it? Because if you think about when you look at speakers who pause a lot, you think of them being geniuses.
It's because they allow the audience to really take on board what they've said, but more importantly, they don't feel they need to fill the silence. So they immediately gain gravitas and authority just by allowing things to rest.
Powerful, isn't it? So, Artie, you're coming. We've twisted your arm to come back to Growth Titans.
Oh, I'm so honored and I loved it. I loved it the first time I came. Anytime I get to do some work with you, Dean, it's a joy.
So we're back in Manchester in May.
We
And
are.
we've had a load of people already buy tickets already, and it's like 10, 12 weeks away or whatever it is. So it's like most people buy their tickets in the last couple of weeks. So it's gonna be a good event.
I know that's because people are organized, Dean. These people are organized.
Yeah.
They know a good thing when they see it.
Yeah, and the food was great last time actually. Although I might not be able to eat as much now because I'm on my regime.
I know. I
So
know you're doing really good on that.
yeah. Well, you've not seen me since November, isn't
I
it?
know. I
So by
know.
the time we get to May, if we don't see each other before, you might have a shock. If I don't relapse and end up in KFC, that is.
You're allowed to, everyone's allowed to relapse once in a while.
Yeah, well, it's a slippery slope with me. So I'm not allowed to relapse. So, Artie, what are you going to be talking about and what are people going to gain from being in your talk at Growth Titans in Manchester?
Yeah, I think, look, one of the things I feel that I get asked a lot is about confidence and about clarity. They're the two most important things I think when it comes to communication. Confidence because it seeps through everything and it doesn't matter what medium we're talking about either when it comes to communication. And clarity because I think when it comes to communication, for me, it's right at the very top of the hierarchy. If your message isn't clear, then it doesn't matter what you do, it's not going to be understood, it's not going to be memorable or retained, and so there's not going to be any action taken off the back of it. So, for me and for any business person, I think they're the two things that you really need to get right. And the best thing about them is their skills.
Hmm.
So, I think they're the two that really the audience would find most valuable, but also things that, I can share that they can put into practice immediately, try out for themselves.
So they can become more clear at communicating through whatever medium, but also they'll project that confidence out through, even if you're nervous, you'll be able to project confidence, which, is pretty much, when you think about it, you can convey a lot of information, but how you deliver it determines whether people believe you or not.
Absolutely. And we're going to dissect confidence. What is it? Where does it come from? Who's got it? How do we get more of it? And with clarity. So I'll give you a quick example. I'll give you a quick little exercise as a gift and a taster. You've got a market stall, and outside the market stall is a sign. And this sign has 5 words, just 5 words, okay? It has fresh fish sold here today. All right. Now I want you to take away just one word. From the 5 words, I want you to lose one word and tell me what your 4 words are.
Fresh fish sold today.
Okay. Right. Now take another word out.
Fresh fish today.
Okay. And now take another word out.
Fresh fish.
Right. And now just leave one word. What would your one word be on this market stall with the sign outside it?
Fish.
Right? And right? It's a market stall.
Yeah.
You've got a sign, it says fish. That is an example of how clarity works. Now, I'm not saying that you don't need context. In this instance, the context was the market stall and the sign, right? And
Yeah.
it works. But that's, sometimes we overcomplicate things.
Hmm.
I'm of the frame of mind that in today's day and age, we have got very good with layering. We constantly choose to layer things because, for whatever reason, we want to look like we're super knowledgeable about something, or we want to give as much as we possibly can for whatever reason. I'm totally the opposite. I'm all about stripping back. I want you to strip right back to get to the essence of what it is you want to say. And then you can have a lot of fun with really making that engaging so the message sticks.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's not just what you say, it's what sticks.
Yeah, 100%.
Now, there's a quote somewhere that I think it was a John Maxwell quote, and it was something about, and maybe I'll get it wrong here, but it was, you're not responsible for just what you say, you're responsible for what, in communication, you're responsible for not just what you say, but what's received.
100%. Because this is all about the presenter and the receiver. Right? As a presenter, as a communicator, you've got a message and you want to relay that to the receiver.
Hmm.
But that's one-way communication. Two-way communication is when you know that the receiver has understood the message in the way you wanted it to be understood.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're going to have a brilliant talk and get everybody thinking and leaving there with more clarity on how they communicate and also more confidence in how they communicate. So Artie's going to be at Growth Titans in May. We'll put the link around here. I'll also share with you Artie's socials so you can go and check her out and pick her brains and chat to her about what she does. Artie, always a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Martin, it's gone so fast.
I know.
We
It's
talk
been
about timing.
lightning. I think Daniela said we need about a half an hour, 40-minute podcast. We're on 53 minutes, but I love talking to you.
Fine.
So, Artie, I'm looking forward to seeing you in May. I know everybody else needs to come and book their ticket and come and hear Artie and the other 7 speakers, including me, on, I think it's the 13th of May, but I might get in trouble for saying that if it's wrong. I think it's the 13th of May, but we'll put the details below. And thank you for joining us again on the podcast, Artie, and see you all soon in May.